Hi everyone, today I'm gonna talk about music transition between day music and night music in the video game Zelda Breath of the Wild. In this game, there is a game clock where 24 hours equals to 24 minutes in real life. This feature is highly enhancing the gameplay in many ways. For example, at night, some skeleton monsters will randomly pop up from the ground trying to kill you. Also at night, most NPCs will go to bed and you won't be able to talk to them until the next morning. On the other hand, during the day, if you try to talk to Goron people in the Death Mountain, they will refuse to help you because they are too busy working. You will have to wait until nighttime. The music is also affected by this game clock. For example, in most villages there are two musics, one for the day, one for the night. The night music is mostly just a simpler and slower version of the day music. As an example, I've chosen the music of the Hateno Village. Let's hear the music playing during the day. And now let's hear the music playing at night. You can hear that the night music still has the same theme as the day music, but somehow it feels more calm, more draggy. It's like a sleepy version of the day music. Let's see what's going on by having a closer look at the form and instrumentation of each music. The day music, here in green, is at the tempo 116 BPM. Every 16 bars, we can hear a different distinctive melody and arrangement idea. On the first group of 16 bars, the theme is played by marimbas. On the second group of 16 bars, the melody is played by an uilleann pipe. And on the last group of 16 bars, the melody is played by a violin. So if we give each segment a letter, the form of this day music is ABC. Now let's compare with the night music here in blue. The tempo is 92 BPM. There are also 3 distinctive groups of 16 bars, and each of them have the same melodies as the day music with some variations in the arrangement. For example, on the A segment of the night music, the melody is also played at the marimbas but transposed down half a step. We are in D sharp minor, as opposed to E minor for the day music. There are some violins playing long sustained notes, but in the A segment of the day music, the violins were less present, only playing a short but active accompanying motif. On the B segment of the night music, the melody is played by a harp instead of the uilleann pipe, and it's also transposed down half a step. On the C segment of the night music, the melody is also played by a violin, but transposed down half a step. But the most important difference is the absence of percussion at night, which was driving the track during the day and making it more active. Because both tracks have different keys and different arrangements, it means that they just did not slow down the tempo of the day music to create the night music. So it made me wonder, how did they do to compose the transitions between both musics? And at what time does it happen in the game? My question was partially answered after I put the Hateno Village music track from the OST into my logic session, revealing a total of 4 different transitions. 2 for going from day to night music, here in orange, and 2 for going from night to day, here in purple. Those transitions are built from the same music material as the day music and the night music, and they also have a tempo change, leading to the tempo of the targeted music. Note that all the tempo change are exactly 16 bars long. So from now, we can have a better picture of what is going on in terms of gameplay mechanic for the transitions. When you enter the Hateno Village during the day music is going to loop indefinitely until a certain time at night, where it will exit to a transition from where the tempo is slowing down until it reaches the tempo of the night music. Then the night music will loop until a certain time in the morning, where it will exit to another transition where the tempo is going to progressively accelerate to the same tempo as the day music, leading back to the day music. Now, the only two pieces of information I was missing were: at what time in the game are the transitions happening? And why are there two transitions and not just one? I had my theory, but I had to test it out by playing the game. So my first experiment was to enter the Hateno Village from 12 noon and to stay there for 24 hours in order to hear what was going on. So 24 hours later, this is what I got. The day music looped for 5 times until it was about 8 PM. From there, it switched to the transition from day to night number 2, which I colored in orange. Then it went straight to the night music until around 3:30 AM, then switched to the transition from night to day number 1, which I colored here in purple. So the first thing you can see is that the day music played longer than the night music, but most importantly, the form ABC is repeating even through the transition. Indeed, the transition from day to night is followed by the segment C of the night music before starting the night music cycle from the segment A. That piece of information told me that when they implemented the music in the game, they probably intended to have all the transitions following the form ABC like the day and night music, which makes more sense. In order to verify that, I needed more data. So I entered the village at many different times. It took me half a day of screen recording, but it was worth it. Even though the first transition from day to night starts with the segment B in the soundtrack, in my experiment, it was always preceded with the segment A of the day music. Same for the first transition from night to day, which in the soundtrack only had half of the B segment and half of the A segment. Here, it appears as a full ABC pattern. So based on all the data I gathered, I realized that the transitions were indeed built on the form ABC, which means that what we hear in the original soundtrack are only the parts of the ABC form that are actually different. In this chart, you can see the form of all the transitions. The segments in orange and purple are the one with the tempo changes. You can see that for the first transition from day to night, the tempo change being at the end, it feels like we are rushing to the night music, which is gonna start right after the segment C. But for the second transition, the tempo change happens around the middle, which gives plenty of time to introduce the night music. For the transition from night to day, we have exactly the same concept. The first transition is rushing to the day music, but the second one is taking its time. The reason why both transitions are built that way is probably because of the time at which the player is going to enter the village. Let's find out. So first I focused on the transition from day to night. When I entered the village at 6 PM, it played the ABC form of the day music, which is 1 minute 40 seconds long, meaning 1 hour 40 minutes in the game. Then at 7:40 PM it started playing the transition 1, leading to the night music at 8:20 PM. But when I entered at 7 PM, it played the day music once until 8:40 PM, then it played the transition number 2. So next, I entered any time between 7:30 PM and 7:59 PM, and it played the transition number 1. And finally, when I entered at exactly 8 PM, it already played the night music. Assuming a transition from day to night can only start playing once the day music cycle is done, if the day music cycle finishes between 7:30 PM and 8 PM, then it's triggering the transition number 1, which has a tempo change happening at the end of the transition. But if the day music was finishing after 8 PM, then it was playing the transition number 2, which has a tempo change happening between the segment A and B. This way, no matter what the day music is doing, the night music will always start before 10 PM. So our time frame to switch from day music to night music here is 8 to 10 PM. So that's a very good trick, but they could have achieved the same results with just one transition. Assuming my transition is 1 minute 15 seconds in real life, and that my tempo change happens only on the B segment of that transition, so exactly in the middle. If according to the brief, the time frame to switch from day music to night music is 8 to 10 PM, that means my transition should start no later than 1 hour and 15 minutes before 10 PM, which is 8:45 PM. And which also means that the last possible cycle of the day music, which is 1 minute 40 seconds, should be 1 hour 40 minutes before that in the game, which is 7:05 PM. With that in mind, the only two rules we need for a unique day to night transition would be: if the day music cycle ends between 7:05 PM and 8:45 PM, or if the player teleports in that time frame, then the music engine should stop looping the day music and instead start playing the transition. And if the player teleports after 8:45 PM, then the night music should play directly. The only reason why I think they did it the way they did is because there are other villages in the game with different day music and night music lengths. So maybe the game music engine was meant to work for all the villages and not just this one. In terms of instrumentation, we already know that the night music doesn't have percussion, which means it should disappear somewhere during the transition from day to night and reappear in the transition from night to day. On the first transition from day to night, we can hear that it dies off before the A segment of the night music. And on the second transition from day to night, it actually disappears towards the end of the B segment before the piano comes in. On the first transition from night to day, it slowly reappears at the beginning of the C segment. And on the second transition from night to day, it reappears in the middle of the A segment. There are other instrumentation variations inside those transitions. For example, in the transition from day to night number 2, on the B segment, the melody is now played by a harp instead of an uilleann pipe, because the harp is the lead instrument during the night music. In the same transition, you can also hear that the piano comes in at the end of B segment. Because it's going to be playing at the next segment, which is the C segment of the night music. Another example, in the transition from day to night number 1 on the C segment, the piano is playing less busy chords than it was playing on the C segment of the day music. Earlier we found out that the night music was in a lower key than the day music. Indeed, the A segment of the day music starts with E minor 7. But for the night music it starts with D sharp minor 7, which is half a step lower. So obviously it means we're gonna have a modulation inside our transitions, allowing to go back and forth between both keys. Because out of the 4 transitions, 2 of them have a direct key change, it's not interesting to study it. So I'm only gonna focus on the other 2, which are the transition from day to night number 2 and the transition from night to day number 1. Starting with the transition from day to night. On this chart, each block represents 1 bar at a 4/4 time signature. If we analyze the chords of both A segment, we see that the chord change happens in the middle of the A segment of the transition, on the second row, so after 8 bars. Instead of going to G minor 7, we stay on the F sharp minor 7. But what's interesting to note is that the whole progression stays the same. Simply put, it's as if the whole second row has been transposed down a half step. By doing so, the B segment of the transition is now in F sharp major 7 instead of G major 7. So, because we went down half a step to reach the key of the night music, it means that somewhere in the other transition we should go up half a step to go back to the original key. But if we now look at the second transition from night to day number 1, that's not what the composer is doing. In fact, the music is going even more down by half a step before going up a full step. And with that transposition a full step above, from G bass A to B sus4, we are going back nicely to the day music in E minor, because B sus4 is the dominant chord in E minor. Now, what if instead of doing what the composer is doing, meaning transposing down to E minor 7, we're actually doing what we were supposed to do, which is going up half a step, which means the whole progression from F minor 7 to B flat from the night music is now transposed up half a step and becomes F sharp minor 7, F sharp minor 7, A bass B, B sus4. Let's hear it from A major 7. Even though that works, staying on the F sharp minor 7 is a bit too repetitive, especially coming from the D add 9 bass F sharp, where the F sharp is repeated at the bass. But the most important reason why they did not do that is probably because of the melody continuity. Listening back from A major 7, we can hear that the melodic idea played on the progression A major 7 and E add 9 bass G sharp is repeated on the progression G major 7 and D add 9 bass F sharp. So the point here is to try to avoid repeating the C sharp with B, C sharp, C sharp. So we're going to try to stay into the melody continuity system and instead go to B, C sharp and D sharp, which would be more in the line of what we had on the A major 7 and a G major 7. Now the problem with D sharp is that it's a tension 13, and tension 13 against a flat 7 creates an interval of flat 2 or flat 9, which is very dissonant. That's why we try to avoid it. We could also play B, C sharp, D, but this melody continuity is not that nice. As you can hear, none of those melodies are really convincing, and this is mainly because of the modulation to F sharp minus 7. Hence the reason why the composer decided to go to E minor 7 instead, because F minor 7 was already taken in the Night Music segment C. Now let's listen back to the original transition from Night to Day. Because of the modulation a full step above on that transition, it portrays nicely the feeling of waking up happening in the game at that time. But at this point it's very subjective, so please let me know in the comments below which one of the transitions did you like the most. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.